Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. If you desire to intimately connect with yourself, your significant other, children, family, friends, community, and higher power, this show is for you. We explore intimate topics, inspiring life stories, spirituality, and insightful tips on strengthening relationships. The show is hosted by Dr. April and her co-host, Coach K. Let's get this episode of the Bringing Intimacy Back show started. We share with you today the secret power to intimacy to create a life you love or love the life you create. Now, here's your host, Dr. April, and co-host, Coach K.
Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. How are you doing, Coach K?
I am doing amazing. And how about yourself?
Oh, wonderful. You know, it's February. Yes. So it is definitely my month.
Yeah. Birthday month, love month, Black History Month. It's all kinds of good things going on.
Yes. And I didn't get a chance last week to highlight the importance of Black History Month, but I feel like it is very important, especially in these days now, in the sense of children's education and learning about all different cultures and all that kind of stuff. So definitely.
Absolutely. Especially when they're trying to take a piece of that history out of the classrooms now. So it's good that it's highlighted so that we all remember that we are a nation of many cultures that come together to form these here United States.
Right, definitely. And I think in learning about other cultures, and also that helps you in learning about yourself, you know what I'm saying? And which ties in to today's topic of what we're talking about is that self-intimacy, designing the life you love.
Absolutely. And knowing self is right smack in the middle of that.
Right. So it's so important for our kids to see people that look like us, that look like them, to see all different other type of stuff. So definitely. And the other thing is this month, of course, is about love, which is the self-love aspect. But one other great aspect that we're doing this month is our charity of the month, which is about random acts of kindness.
Random acts necessary.
Definitely. Yeah. So if you're thinking, what is a random act of kindness or random acts, the website's random acts of, that is doing something charitable to someone that you don't know and not expecting anything back in return and not even, recognition, whether it means paying for someone's lunch behind you, at McDonald's or helping someone to their car, or maybe even giving your waiter or waitress an extra tip that you just, it's random acts.
Yeah, that's a huge thing that I see on TikTok with a lot of folks. They actually get in donations so that they can go out into the community and just randomly bless somebody who may be a waitress or someone who may be, I think a pizza delivery guy, he's an elderly gentleman. I think he was over 80 years old, and they gave him a nice, it was either $300 or $1,000 tip. And I'm pretty sure it made the world of difference to him, because not all elderly people can survive on just their Social Security check. So I love random acts. They're definitely necessary to help the world stay in a positive momentum and good way.
Right, definitely. I saw something similar where it was an older gentleman working at Walmart or one of these places, and the person felt so bad for them, so they started a GoFundMe account, which raised over, $40,000 or $50,000, which allowed that older gentleman to retire. So random acts is definitely. So if you're thinking, I don't know what to do, go into the site, www.randomacts.org.
Awesome.
Yes, definitely. And so going back to our topic of the day, which is design the life you love. I like that because many people come into therapy and they are like, wanting to fix me, or asking how to fix me, how to, they feel so helpless.
Not realizing that it is you that controls that a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
And you can feel helpless. So I'm glad that we are talking about that. And I'm glad that the title is, as it states, design the life that you love. That's very important. Just listening to that and letting that sink in.
Right, definitely. And so we have an expert. Her name is Shana Francesca, and she is going to come back and blow our minds on how she has helped others design the life you love. So stay tuned so you can hear about it and how it can maybe impact your life. We'll be back in a moment.
Learn to cultivate a deeper connection with yourself and your inner spirit in order to further manifest a more fulfilling, intimate life. Find your purpose in life, develop unwavering confidence, heal your inner child, and authentically live this purpose every day. It starts with you. Couldn't be further from the truth. Intimacy is not taboo, nor should it cost a fortune. Get your copy today. It Starts With You is available on Amazon, Audible, and...
Welcome back to the Bringing Intimacy show, where intimacy is real. Welcome, Shana.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
Yes. We're so happy to hear you and to see you, of course, and to hear you if you're listening on podcast. And so Shana, she's a speaker, a writer, an entrepreneur, and I guess you help people live more joyful lives through the principles of life design, which is amazing.
Yeah. And normally people are like, what is life design? That's usually their very first question. And really, I mean, there's other people who use that term, but for me, I made it up. And because I recognized that the minute we set an intention and we apply that intention to something, we're designing it. Right.
Right.
And so in our lives, there's so much that's demanding our attention, and it makes it really hard for us to be intentional, right? Because so much of our attention is taken away from us, or is hijacked. And so when we can get back present within ourselves and set an intention for a moment for our lives, we can start to set boundaries around that intention. We can use it as a guide to say, okay, this is aligning with that. This is not. We can really start to carve away what's unnecessary in our lives and get to the heart of things, and really be able to spend more time with the things that bring us joy and are aligned with our intention.
Right. And so I know people are listening, and since you defined that word, I kind of want you also to go back and define the word intentions, because people may not know exactly what that really means. You know what I'm saying? They're like, how can I?
Yeah. So intention is not action. Right. Intention is deciding what you want a moment to mean, right? What outcome or what meaning you want to assign to a specific moment. Now that's the Shana version of the actual definition, but that's essentially what it is assigning, a specific, or desiring a specific outcome from anything that we are doing. So setting an intention is itself not an action. It's once we set the intention, design is when the action comes in, right? When we're applying that intention to an action is when we're designing something.
Right. So also, you're also taking responsibility of your life.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because, yes, systems of oppression exist. Yes, they do. And they affect different people in different ways. Even inside those systems of oppression, though, we do have choices we can make, right? And by focusing on applying intention to the choices we do have to make and getting curious about what's possible within those choices, we can start to get better connected to ourselves and then better connected to one another. And that's when we can affect great change, is when we are getting connected to others. But we can't really connect to one another until we're better connected to ourselves. Right? Till we truly understand who we are, where we came from, what has formed us, form an intention, connect with other people, and then we can move the needle to dismantle those systems of oppression, and we can start to live in community with one another.
And do you find that a lot of people are it's more difficult to get to that place because people are resistant with just being in tune with themselves by seeing it as selfish or self-centered?
It is, yeah. Well, yeah, because capitalism tells us that taking care of ourselves is absolutely, I mean, that's in direct opposition of capitalism, right? In capitalism,
Right.
we sacrifice ourselves to whoever's above us in that hierarchy, right? We sacrifice our labor, ourselves, our humanity in service of, someone else's profit. So yeah, when I say that my work is like so foundational, right? Because saying dismantling systems of oppression, that sounds overwhelming, right? That sounds like a big thing that we can't do, right? But we are, when we are flying right in the face of those things, when we get curious, when we get intentional, when we just start to make decisions from a place of, is that really aligning with how I want to feel in my life? Is that really aligning with who I want to be in this world? Or is that in alignment with marketing? Is that in alignment with societal pressures and societal expectations, right? When I can get quiet with myself, I can let go of societal expectations and I can start saying, does this feel good for me, right? Is this, do I really feel aligned with this? And that in and of itself, being intentional in and of itself and getting curious, that is already beginning the work of pushing back against systems of oppression.
Yes, I'm sitting here thinking about this, and even as a young female that I think I am, and the systems of oppression, how it's so very important, because you talked about that self-intimacy.
Yeah.
Really, really knowing yourself.
Yeah.
And that means knowing how you were developed, even your parents and on both sides and grandparents, understanding how you grew up, that trauma, whatever you see, and how that shapes, your brain. And like you said, designing yourself. How do I want to feel?
Yeah. How do I want to show up? How do I want to feel? And I think for most of us, we haven't really even sat in the place to ask ourselves those questions because so much of our time is demanded. We're just trying to get through the next day. We're just trying to make it from sun up to sundown and get all the things we need to get done. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's why I say to people, getting intentional is actually frees up more of your time because you're able to release that which is no longer or perhaps never did serve you, which typically is other people's expectations for our lives, for our homes, for ourselves, for our performance, for our productivity, right? I mean, all of it, right? Then we can get back to a place where, okay, I'm going to spend my energy in this direction and on these things, and I'm going to have more time to do that. Okay. And mental energy to do that.
Right. So Shana, we have a question from Tanya, and this is a question for a lot of women out there who have children and maybe they don't feel like they have the financial support of their fathers, of whatever case may be. Yeah. And they're struggling. They're like, I have all these bills to pay. I have 2 or 3 children. I don't feel like I have any time for myself.
Yes.
Am I stuck like this? Yeah.
Well, so what I typically go back to is Mia Birdsong talks about this in her book, How We Show Up. Talks about building community, and it talks about the fact that parents with children, or any of us, right? Because every single one of us needs a village. Adult, child.
We need a village. Everyone needs a village.
Everyone needs a village. And to need a village. And yet to need a village makes us human. It doesn't make us weak or incompetent, right? We need each other deeply, fundamentally, we need each other. So when we can tap into that, I would say, especially for single mothers or for parents in general, it is not possible to be everything for your children. But what you can do, right, is connect to other parents who have children and say, hey, you know what, once a week, what if us 2 or 3 parents, we trade off, and this week you know, you're watching the kids, right? And next week I'm watching the kids, so that you have maybe a day or a few hours to yourself, right? Where you can have time for yourself. You can get intentional. You could just be quiet. You could do nothing. You could cry. You could laugh. You could go on a walk. You could do anything that you need to do for yourself, and have the support and create that community. And then you're also connecting with other people who are going through many of the same things you are, you know, other parents, right? And other single parents. And get that support that you need and form that community, which we all desperately need. When you look at other cultures outside of the US, that's typical, right? It's just not typical here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right, exactly. Because then here we're such an individualistic society versus a collective society.
Right. Yeah, it's hyper individualized. Capitalism honors, not just honors, it praises hyper individualization. It requires hyper individualization, because if we were connected to each other, the system would fail.
Right, right. Another question I do have is, like, you know, there are people who are thinking they have an intention, but they are, you know, can't think of another word, fearful.
Yeah.
Yes. And I know you talk a lot about intention and courage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. To be human is to fear.
Oh, exactly.
Fear is not bad. Fear is simply the recognition. It's the moment when we realize we're expanding beyond who we previously knew ourselves to be. Right? Mm-hmm. We're entering new territory, right? And so there's naturally going to be discomfort there. When we can get to a place where we recognize that discomfort is necessary for our human existence, right? Again, systems of oppression do not want us to grow and change and learn. They thrive off of our ignorance, right? And so when we're growing and changing, of course, the systems would tell us fear is bad. But fear is not bad. Fear is a necessary part of being human. So getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is a necessary part of our existence, and necessary for us to truly connect to ourselves and one another.
Yeah, I like to think of children whenever we're talking about growth, and just listen to you talk about fear, because we would not get to a place of talking and walking if we were born to know that fear was a negative thing. Yeah. So it's great. Yeah, we learn it, you know, later on for boundaries. But if we really think about the example of children, where you are today, you wouldn't be there if you were born into a full life of fear, and you accepted it as law.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think, you know, that's been the greatest awakening for me, is recognizing that, you know, that fear isn't bad, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and making my peace with that it is just an indication of my growth. Yeah. And it's also a moment, I mean, fear in that sense of like growth, right? But fear can also be an indication of something bad, right? Or harmful to us, right? And I'm not specifically talking about that fear. But I think when we tap into our intuition and we're getting more intentional, we're able to check in with our intuition more and say, is this in alignment with who I am? Is this actually crossing a boundary? Right? Because when it's crossing a boundary, then that fear might come up to tell you this isn't okay. Right? And this is crossing my boundary. And then that's different, right? That fear is, this is too far, right? But typically when I'm talking about fear, I'm talking about us pushing ourselves rather than someone pushing against us, right?
Yeah, it's like fear is your checkpoint.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when it's coming up because someone else is pushing against us, that's usually a violation of a boundary. When it's us pushing against what we thought was the limit of our existence, that's different. That's growth. That's change.
Yes, and so this concept, can it only apply when you're feeling good about yourself, or can you transform your life at any moment?
Being intentional absolutely does not mean that we're happy all the time. And that's toxic positivity, and I'm not a fan.
Yes.
We cannot experience the beautiful, beautiful highs without experiencing the lows too. I'm not talking about trauma, right? Trauma is not necessary. Trauma needs to be eliminated from society, right? Trauma is people crossing our boundaries, violating consent, trauma is formed in those moments. What I instead mean is like challenging, right? And just understanding, you know, what we're capable of, and being willing to move through that.
Right. And I like how you said that, of course, there's things that are going to happen that are challenging in our lives.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the fear and the growth comes from, right? Is that challenge, not the trauma. Trauma, I think, puts veils, blurs our vision of who we actually are. It starts to build walls between our authentic self and the way that we can show up. And trauma literally is stored in our body. It literally rewires our brain. You guys know this, right? Trauma is sinister, and it is passed from generation to generation. Epigenetics shows us that, right? But trauma and challenge are two different things. Challenge is a necessary part of life. Trauma is not.
Right, right. And it's also how we perceive something.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Because for some people, they can perceive a hurricane as kind of what this area we just went through, and can still make it through even though they've lost everything.
Yeah.
But
and I think it shows up as trauma, especially shows up as trauma when we don't feel like we have a community to support us, when we don't have support in moving through that difficult moment. For me, every time I look back at a difficult part, like a difficult moment that turned into trauma, right? My personhood was violated, my human rights were violated, my, you know, consent was violated, and I didn't really have the support that I needed to move through that moment, right? Had I had the support I needed, that moment may never have happened in the first place, right? And I would have been able to move through the pain of it much easier on the other side. So that's why my work is so important to me, is because building community, right? It helps us to get curious, to lean in, to get to know one another, and less often to actively do things to harm one another for our own benefit.
Yeah, I was just thinking that importance of teaching about community. And we talked about, you know, from kids' perspective, how it's really important to teach them that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think kids inherently know that. I think we teach it out of them.
Oh, that's true. Yes, you're right. Exactly. You're exactly right.
We program it out of them so that they can survive within systems of oppression.
Yeah. And within our comfort limits.
Correct.
And it's so scary to see, you know, a child who wants to just do, but the fear of a parent who may have experienced trauma or just live inside of their own fear, they keep them just in that place. And the only hope is that that child grows up and says, okay, I know what I was told and what I was given, but this is how I can be.
Yeah. Well, that's my reality, right? I grew up inside of evangelical Christianity. And I grew up in an abusive household. Those two things typically go hand in hand, unfortunately. And so for me, I went from being a conservative Christian, raised as conservative Christian, to someone who was like, this is all fear. This is all based on fear and manipulation, right? And this is the Christianity I was raised with, right? So I'm not here to challenge anybody else's beliefs. I'm simply here to express what I experienced. For clarification for people. For me, the expression of God was, you're nothing without God. You can't do anything good without him. Everything good about you comes from him. If we were to relate that to a human being saying that to us, that would be considered abuse, right? That would be an abusive relationship.
Right.
Yet somehow it's okay when it's a deity, right? And so at some point I had to get to a place where I was like, this relationship is abusive and I don't want this. Right. And not all religion, right? Not all Christian religion operates that way and comes from a place of fear. That was what it was expressed for me. And so ultimately walking away from that, and now I'm anything but conservative, obviously. I'm anything, I don't practice religion anymore. I believe we are all deeply connected to one another. I believe that that there is that which connects us all. But so I think it is absolutely possible to change the way that you grow up and challenge all of those things. It's why I do the work I do, is because I think for so many people, they may not have grown up in as extreme version of the way that I did.
Right. But
for so many people, they grew up in some version of the way that I did, and that belief system, and that, whether they grew up in a religious home or not, there's still that I'm the one who's right. Like parents and also can behave that way. I'm right, you're wrong, you can't question. There's still that same power structure there, right? Yeah. That so many of us can recognize, and being able to get curious and heal that and move through that and then establish what is good and right for us is so critical. And to know that we don't need to force that on any other person. Like that's the key. What's good and right for me has nothing to do with what's good and right for you. And as long as whatever I'm doing doesn't harm you or deny you your human rights, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the key.
Right. One of the other keys that you mentioned was curiosity. Mm-hmm. You're right. We are taught a certain way based on how we grow up.
Yeah.
And we think that's the only way.
Yeah.
But then when we become curious, whether we study different religions and all this other stuff, then it's like, wow, there's a different way to view God. There's a different way to view what a parent is, different ways to view what a man is, what a woman is. Yeah. There's a variety of different things.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And to know that all of that categorization is in an effort to oversimplify things, that the human existence is dramatically nuanced, right? Mm-hmm. It is not easily put into any single bucket. And when we seek to categorize, we seek to remove humanity. It is by its nature, categorization is by its nature dehumanization, right? And leads to objectification and leads to genocide. It leads to terrible things, right? So us pulling back from that and recognizing and embracing the nuance in ourselves and in one another is absolutely critical.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And also, I'm just piggybacking because a lot of the categories that we've created based on XYZ, we didn't choose how we came into this world.
Right. Yeah. But we get to choose how we show up in it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that's the point that you're trying to say.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So people out there listening and they're like, golly, we want to know more about what you do and how to design their lives. How can they find you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to head to my website. It's www.consonate.world. I'm sure it'll be tagged somewhere. Yeah. And there's information about me as a speaker, group coaching, one-on-one coaching, all kinds of information there. You can also subscribe. I send out an email blast a couple times a month. I send it out very intentionally. We plan them at the beginning of the month. So, they're only coming out when there's something that we want to share or something important that information that we want to give away. So I encourage you to subscribe, and definitely you can also find my contact information there. So you can reach out to me directly.
Okay. Yes, definitely. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you. Yes. So again,
great.
It's been wonderful. Yes. We'll take a break and we'll be back in a moment.
Improving intimacy, everyday expressions is all about you and your partner. Opportunities for intimacy are scattered endlessly within every second of life you create together with your partner. Everyday expressions will educate you and open your eyes to just how great your relationship could be with a little TLC. Improving intimacy, everyday expressions provides a true baseline for the strength in your relationship you've been looking for. If you're looking for a romantic idea to make your partner feel special this Valentine's Day, this is a perfect book for you. Available in Kindle, Audible, and paperback.
Welcome back to the Bringing Intimacy Show, where intimacy is real. Wow, Coach Kate, I love how she said that we all need a community.
Oh, absolutely. There were so many amazing points that were made. And one that, while she was talking, I really wanted to point out is to not just think about the social people that you're around that affects you, but your job and companies. Because most of us spend the bulk of our lives with a company. And so who you decide to continue on in a company with could ooze into your beliefs and put you into that box as well, which is, I just say for myself, I can work a job for 24 hours and know if I'm going to come back the next day, and I'm okay with that. And when you're intentional about yourself, when you put yourself first, those are the things that you can achieve. No amount of money can be put in front of me to make me do anything that does not serve me to be in a peaceful place. So I love this entire discussion.
Yeah, and I mean, as you were just sharing, I can share with the audience. I'm just even thinking when I worked as an elementary counselor and how it's so much of trying to put people or little children into categories. Yes, yes, that it just really, irritated me that, I mean, I didn't last long on that as a counselor. So yes, I just want to thank her so much for being such a great guest on the show.
Absolutely. And speaking of great guests, we have some more amazing shows that are coming up. On February the 16th, we have Dating in Today's Generation with Alan Ramakalawan. And then on February the 23rd, we have Survive to Thrive, How to Get Intimacy Back After a Narcissistic Relationship with Woman Warrior Christina. Then on March the 2nd, we have Life After Death with Tina Irwin. And then we have something special for you guys on March the 9th. So you want to make sure that, yes, you're tuning into all of this, but especially on March the 9th. And maybe we'll drop another hint next week.
Yes. Okay. All right, then. Thank you guys so much. And we'll see you guys next week. This has been the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook and LinkedIn.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Bringing Intimacy Back, where intimacy is real. You can also find us at bringingintimacyback.com, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Dr. April Brown's 7-book series, Improving Intimacy, is now on Amazon. We'll see you next Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe.